lot of you guys know I used to work at Disney Feature Animation, and I had the incredible luck back in 1997. This young lady started at Disney, Amy Smeed, and she was wonderful. She started out as a scene setup person, very, very quickly rose her way through the ranks and became a full-fledged animator, and we're so lucky to have her here. Everybody, let's give a great big hand for Amy Smeed.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Hey, we have waters and everything. Yay. Yippee. So, wow.
Did you guys like the movie?
Yeah. All right. So, yeah. So, the thing that I was really blown away with was a couple months ago. I was reading a newspaper from your hometown, Michigan, the state, not the town, and it was an article on Moana, and I didn't know. I saw your name in the credits, and I'm like, oh, lead animate, great, Amy, cool. But what I didn't know was that this was the first time in history of Disney that a woman was made the lead animator on the lead character of a movie, and that's amazing. It's a historical first, people. This is her. And so that was great. Was it? Did they just come to you and say, "Hey, you want to do this," or did you have to work for it really hard, or did you pay someone money?
Yeah. I've been at the studio for about 19 years.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing with taking this position was, I love animating. I love sitting at my desk behind my computer and just animating. So I was fine animating the rest of my life, and I was happy with that. And then I had some people ask me, you know, this position's coming up, you should think about putting your name in the hat for that. So I ended up interviewing with the directors, Ron and John. I'm sure you guys are all aware of Ron and John. Mm-hmm. I interviewed with them, and then also Oznat was our producer.
Were they drawing caricatures of you while you were interviewing? They're famous for drawing caricatures with people while they talk to them.
They're amazing. Yeah. So in case any of you don't know Ron and John, John Musker and Ron Clements, they directed films like Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Princess and the Frog. They've done a ton of films. Yeah. So for me to work that closely with them was just a huge dream come true. But also I was very nervous about that because I thought, I don't want to screw up their movie. So yeah, I ended up interviewing for it, and so the way it works, so my title was co-head of animation on the film. My partner was Hiram Osmond. Hiram came to the studio, I think it was on Bolt, so I'm not sure if you remember Hiram, but he and I, we bring different things to the table, and he was a great partner to have, and it was just such an amazing experience. And I'm so glad that I did put my name in the hat for it and that I went for it. But it was a big deal for me to do on myself. It was hard for me.
Wow, well, we're glad you did it because man, the results are amazing.
Yeah,
some of the best character animation I've seen in a very long time was Moana.
Thank you. I feel like Tangled was a film, we got to work with Glenn Keane. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Glenn. He did characters like the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, Tarzan. Just amazing, amazing. And so we got the chance to work with him on Tangled, and then Byron and Nathan, the two directors, and they really taught us so much about acting and so much about the thinking of the characters and what's behind the characters' eyes. And so we, as a department, we grew so much from that film, more so than any other film that we had worked on prior. And I feel like ever since then, every film, our department just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. We spend so much time on the acting and the performance of our characters. When we are in studio time, which is sometimes a very short amount of time, sometimes it's a longer amount of time, which is between films, we often have actors and actresses come in. We have acting coaches come in, and they teach us about acting. And I was saying to Craig earlier, one of the acting coaches, her name is Laura, oh gosh, I just said her name now. I think I'm a little nervous. Warner Laughlin. She taught us about building the backstory of a character, and if you can build the backstory of a character so for instance, if you have a character that's 21 years old, think about what got her to her point in life. So what happened when she was 5? Maybe she was left in a grocery store, whatever the thing is, but you make up stories for these characters. That way, when you are creating a scene, you've built them up, and so you can naturally come to know what's going on in their head and what they're thinking.
Their past is going to inform what they're doing.
Yeah, which was so cool because we learned that she came in on Frozen. The first time she came in was Frozen. And she brought in a couple actresses, and they would just make up scenes of Anna when Anna was little, and Elsa when she was little, and Kristoff. And so it was really cool because then once you got to start animating Anna, you're like, oh yeah, remember this thing that happened when she was little? So that was really fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of prep, when you're prepping, there's a lot of some animators like to shoot a lot of video reference of themselves for reference. And some don't do anything at all. They just go ahead and start animating.
Sure.
Where do you fit in there?
So for me, I spend a ton of time planning out my scene because I think animation is so time consuming. So there's 24 frames per second. If you're not spending the time up front planning your scene, you can potentially be wasting a ton of time. And so it depends on the scene and how complicated it is, but I would say for an average scene, I spend close to a day prepping for it. And so for me personally, what I do is I am given the line. We're always given the line before we can animate it. And I memorize it. So I say it over and over and over in my head. And then we have an acting room. So I go into our acting room and I act out the scene. So something I have to be careful of, though, is for Moana, for instance, Moana's 16. Clearly, I'm not 16. So
17?
So I don't want Moana to look like me. But something that I find when I'm acting out the scene is sometimes there's maybe something my eyebrows do. Maybe there's a hand gesture I'm doing. Sometimes with body mechanics, if I'm walking around doing something complicated, I want to study that and figure out, what's driving that action. And then I'm always caricaturing that performance. I never want to take my timing or my spacing or even really my poses. But I am analyzing it and trying to get acting beats that I like. So I will act it out sometimes, I would say at a minimum of probably 20, and it's probably more like around 40-ish times. And then I go through all of that reference and I save out my favorites, which are usually around 10, or it depends on how long the scene is. And then I really dig through all of that and I take notes and I'll say, okay, on take 1, I loved my eyebrows from frames 40 to 45. On take 2, I really loved this little hand, girly thing I did or whatever. And so I take those notes and then I refer back to it as I'm animating. So
when you're doing this, do you pretty much act normally, or do you exaggerate? Do you push yourselves?
I try to push myself a bit when I'm in the acting room, but I'm also trying to be natural to myself, who I am.
So remain truthful. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then what I do is even though I'm analyzing that footage, when I'm posing out my scene, I'm always pushing my poses, always. So if I'm acting out a scene and I'm sitting like this, depending on who the character is, I might change. I'm going to add more tilt, rhythm, and twist, which is something that Glenn would say on Tangled.
Tilt, rhythm, and twist.
Yeah. I would love to take credit for that. Those are Glenn's words. But
somebody wrote that down, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm always thinking of those kinds of things as I'm posing it out, and I tend to go pose to pose to pose, which is another thing we learned from Glenn. And it's the traditional way of thinking where you are taking all your key poses, and then I tend to do all my keys and my breakdowns. And then I'll show it to the directors. At our studio, we tend to show most scenes around 3 times to the director. We show a rough blocking pass, which are my key poses. And then we get notes from the director, and then I'll put it on ones. And then I show it to the director again, and then get more notes. And then I polish everything up. It's one kind of tip I would say. you need to make sure there's enough information in that rough blocking pass for the directors and supervisors to know acting-wise where you're going. So I always have all my facial expressions in there and my acting elements. I don't want to put too much information because I could potentially be wasting a lot of time if they have massive notes and I have to start over or start off, you know, a big chunk of it. And it is a fine line, but I definitely want to make sure I'm spending enough time on that rough blocking pass, because if I'm not, the director's not going to understand where I'm going with the scene, and then I'm going to get even more notes. So yeah, there's that balance of what's too much and what's too little. Ultimately, you don't want to be wasting time, but you do want to make sure that your acting pass is really clear and they know where you're going. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna change tracks a little bit here. Advice for aspiring animators and stuff. What do you recommend that they work on? Whatever you want to talk about. What they should have in their reel. What there should be real. Take it away.
Okay. So reels. Sometimes people feel like I have to have a 3-minute long reel and I'm going to put everything in there. You don't need to do that. Don't worry about how long your reel is. It is important to have a couple performance tests that are showing acting with dialogue. And it's also important to make sure there's some sort of full body test or whatnot that's showing a character going through some sort of body mechanics, physics, because we need to make sure that you guys have an understanding of body mechanics and physics and all of that. So I would say at least a couple full body or action, something that's showing full body, and then at least a couple acting tests. And I would say be happy with what you're putting on there. We don't always know where people are at in their career or in their studies, so sometimes people will want to put everything on there. And they might have 3 or 4 really strong pieces, and they might have 2 or 3 that are not so great, and we don't know, is that their latest? Is that what they started out with? So it's good to have stuff on your reel that you are happy with and, you know, putting your best foot forward, I would say. But like I said, it doesn't have to be really long.
So it's quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a better way to say it. And then kind of like I was saying earlier with acting, our studio at Disney, we spend so much time on performance. So I would say when I went to school, we didn't have acting classes, which kind of blows me away why they didn't teach that. So everything I've learned acting-wise has been through people at work that I've learned from, or just studying film. We're constantly watching films and studying actors and actresses that we love, and what is it that we love about that. And for me, I love animating emotional scenes. So I would, years ago, I like stepping through and seeing like, what is it in a facial performance? Subtle scenes, a lot of it is coming from the face. So I would kind of step through and I would do that with a lot of live action films. And then also with traditional films, just traditional films where, like stepping through anything of Glenn's or Nick Raniere. You remember Nick?
Yeah, oh my
working
gosh.
with him. He has a lot of great stuff. So there's just so many animators that I admire. So it's fun to step through that stuff.
Other than the movies you've worked on, what would you say is one of your favorite animated movies that when you think of like, my favorite animated movie, Wall-E, or Monsters, Inc., or...
That's so hard because there's so many that I love.
Bolt.
I really love Princess and the Frog, and I like the story, but there's so much great animation because the animators they had on that film were just incredible.
That was Dale Bear and those guys, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Some amazing 2D. The old world 2D talent was completely in on that film, and it showed. Andre. I think the only one that wasn't really was Glenn, but that was because he was working Tangled.
Yeah. So
he was all tangled up in something else.
Yeah.
But Sorry.
And then I love like Lady and the Tramp and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty,
classics,
all of those, Snow White. So it's so hard for me to have a favorite, but yeah.
Golden moments. Do you purposely look for spots in your scenes where you can put that golden moment in so you can get that picture and publicity or the poster or whatever?
I've never thought of that before. I mean, Glenn used to always call them golden keys. And so I think all of our keys were always looking for those golden poses.
For those poster moments.
Yeah, but I never thought of it in terms of putting it on a poster.
How important is that to those? Is that like?
For me, it's not important
not
at all.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if all of a sudden you see a pose on a poster, you're like, wow, that's really cool. But I've never thought of that before.
Yeah. Are you ever surprised when you're flipping through magazines and stuff and you see one of your shots in it?
Oh,
and you go, wow, look,
yeah.
I did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Fun. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah. I think, I was going to say, I think it's probably pretty rare, but yeah, it is fun when that happens. Yeah. For me, one of my favorite things is when you work on a film and you see it with an audience and you see what people laugh at and what they cry at. And
it's completely different, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Because there's and also there's times when, because we see a film so many times, so we forget that certain things are funny. And so then when you see it at because we've laughed at it the first few times, and then you see it with an audience and you're like, oh, wow.
Oh, thank goodness they laughed.
Yeah. Okay, good, it's funny.
Because that got old really a long time ago.
Yeah. But if you've animated that scene that somebody's laughing at or someone's, I always love doing the crying sign. Yeah, it's a huge payoff. Yeah. That's my favorite thing, or one of my favorite things. Yeah.
Other general advice for aspiring animators?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
I'm
I know.
trying to think
I just blocked that question out for you.
I'm trying to think of what would be useful for you guys. The way I work, I tend to work, I was talking about my key poses, right? So I work pose to pose to pose. I tend to, if I have more than one character in a scene, I will actually change my tangents to stepped in the graph editor because my characters might be on different timings and I only want the character to see my golden poses. So I will actually change my keys
to linear,
to step,
or stepped,
to stepped, right. And then once I've shown it to the director, then I put it on. Usually I put it on spline. I typically don't let the computer give me any in betweens. So once I've blocked out the scene, then I'll go back to frame 1 and I'll work it out in phrases. So if a phrase is 40 frames, then I work on those first 40 frames. And then I go to the next 40 frames. I flip, this was useful. Something, I'm trying to think of all these things. This was something Byron did on Tangled. Actually, I think he did on Bolt too the first time. So if your sometimes your eye gets adjusted to a pose and you think it looks okay. And then you flip it. And if it looks weird and awkward, it's because it is. So I think sometimes, and I mean, I used to do this time, I'm like, wow, this just looks weird the other way. Okay, well, I just won't look at it that way. Well, it's because the pose isn't holding up. Yeah. So if it looks weird from, like a physical way, then it probably, the weight is off or something is off there. So I'm constantly flipping my poses, and then I flip it the way it should be. And then when I'm working on ones, I try not to flip it too much at the beginning because now my eye is going to start getting adjusted to the flipped way. So I'll work it out on ones, and then once I'm fairly happy with it, then I'll flip it and play it flipped. And I'm doing that more for the timing sense of the scene. And there's sometimes where things will stand out to me, like, oh, this is a little bit too slow or too fast. And then I'll make adjustments. Texture is something that's really important in a scene. And what I mean by texture is sometimes, like if I'm talking to you and I'm acting out a scene and there's no texture, I'm not doing anything. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I'm going through these moments. So
this is like that little independent activity that you're doing while talking to me. Yeah.
So what I want to do is like there's maybe something, it's like music, where you have the beats of something and there might be something a little bit quicker and slower and
right, there's a rhythm, yeah.
Yeah. So that's something important to think about when you guys are blocking out your scenes and thinking about the acting and performance of something that I think is important that sometimes gets overlooked. Entertainment in a scene, and entertainment can be something funny, whether it's a line, whether it's a situation, but it can also be something that moves you in an emotional way.
Right.
When I think of entertainment. So, yeah. Trying to think of
that was awesome. That was awesome. Wow.
Useful for you guys.
So,
yeah.
Questions?
I'll ask a quick.
Yeah.
So I noticed, like this one particular scene kind of stood out to me, and it just kind of caught my eye, like how real it looked when they were both on the island when she first finds him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
When Moana finds him, and
Yeah.
then, like his eyes were blinking, like it just looks so real.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like, do you actually have, Dwayne Johnson in there? Are you taking his mannerisms to do that animation, or is that just something you think of?
Usually it's things that we think of. I will say something that we did take from Dwayne Johnson was the eyebrow, the people's eyebrow. Right? Isn't that what they call it? Yeah. It's funny because I don't know. He's amazing, but I didn't follow. I think, did that come from wrestling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was with Hiram, and he's like, the people's eyebrow. I'm like, oh, is that what that's called? But so that eyebrow thing we did take from him. But we didn't want to overdo it and put it in too many times. But I can't remember how many times, 4 or 5 times. When the actors come in, into the booth, that's all recorded. So we have access to all of that, and so we can look at that and say, oh, Dwayne did this thing, or Ali'i did this thing, and try to put that into our animation. For me, my favorite part is coming up with the performance and the acting myself. Even if I'm doing a male character, because I've done lots of male characters as well, it's still a really fun thing for me to do. So not to say I never look at the reference, because I do, just to see if there's something in there. I don't always for every scene, but some I definitely do, especially the beginning of the film while you're figuring out the characters. But I think a lot of it, we are so detailed and so frame by frame, and where I was saying we don't typically let the computers give us any in-betweens. There's always something like the timing of a blink or something that we're art directing, and the lashes, we're dragging the lashes typically as they blink. So we're
Wow.
art directing everything.
Right down to the lashes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Our rigging
So you have that little
department.
bone joints on the lashes now?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
They're not bone joints, but they're I don't know what they're called.
Deformers?
Yeah. Something like that. Disney is a really collaborative studio, even more so since you've been there, and it's something that I love.
Mm-hmm.
I love that we work with the riggers really, really closely now.
That's cool.
And we are starting to work more closely with the riggers on Tangled, but even pre-production time. So I was on Moana for a year before we actually started animating, and that year is we're getting all the characters up and running. So that's when we're working really closely with the riggers and the modelers, and our character designer Bill Schwab was amazing. So it was a team of people
Yeah.
that are creating these characters, and a lot of times we get credit in animation for doing all of these things, but it really is a team of people that are working really hard.
Yeah, we were really lucky on Bolt because as riggers, we spent a lot of the time working with you, the animators, to help develop the rigs as well. And it was really nice because
Yeah.
they'd come in and say, oh, and I want the shoulder to curve this way or decrease this
Yeah.
way. We're like, oh, great, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
So it was really great. Yeah.
And we all have Cintiqs now, so a lot of
Nice.
the
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
awesome. So a lot of the feedback that we're giving to riggers, and also they're giving to us sometimes, is through drawovers. So we'll do a pose with the shoulders or
Right.
with whatever, and I'm sure people are probably doing that back then too, but
Yeah.
there's tons of drawovers.
Jason
out
Ryan
there.
was, I know that.
Yeah,
But
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't know who else was. But
Yeah. Yeah.
Jason Ryan is an amazing animator. Was a 2D animator that went 3D, but he draws everything in 2D before animated in 3D.
Yeah, he was my mentor.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why she's so good. She had a good teacher.
Yeah, he was a super nice guy.
Hi. My question is, does working on an animated feature with such a strong and brilliant heroine inspire you? And if so, how?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a daughter. She's 9. So for me as a parent, it inspired me on that level as well. To get to work with a character that is so brave and courageous. And Ali'i was amazing. I don't know how many of you have you seen anything from her, but just her as a person, what she brought to the character was really great. She's just such a nice, sweet person. And she came and talked to our entire animation department, and we filmed that reference. So like I was saying earlier with the Dwayne stuff, we could frame by that. She's very expressive with her hands and her face. She has awesome facial expressions. So, but yeah, getting to work on a film with a female character that is so brave and courageous like that was really special, and it meant a lot to me. Yeah, and our studio, this doesn't quite go to your question, but that I love is we do tons and tons of research for all of our films. It's something that John Lasseter deeply, deeply believes in. So our directors and producer and production designer, they went to the Pacific Islands many times, meeting the people and finding out more about the culture. And we had a lot of people come into the studio. There's a man named Nainoa Thompson who came in and talking about navigating and wayfinding and what that means to him. And so there's scenes where they're doing this, and what they're doing is they're measuring the distance here. And so if you do a hand gesture like that, that's not right. You're lining this up with the horizon line. So having people come in and I wouldn't have known that. I don't know anything about wayfinding or navigation, but it's something that I think makes it more special for us getting to work on a film like that, because we're learning about another culture, and hopefully we're representing it well too. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Amy. My name is Cricket Rumley, and I'm one of the senior screenwriting instructors here at the Film Academy. And hi.
Hi.
I have seen Moana probably 15 times, and I don't have any children, so I really don't have an excuse, except that it's an amazing film, and
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very inspiring. And I wanted to ask you about how we hear a lot about animated screenplay. How does the screenplay get written? What is your involvement? When do you get it? The rewrite process?
Sure.
A lot of our screenwriting students want to write animated films, but I don't think they understand the process. So can you speak to that a little bit?
I can speak to it a little bit. I don't know a whole lot about the screenwriting process. What I do know about it is that what you were saying earlier, there are multiple iterations on, and sometimes they're not always from the same screenwriter. So on Moana, we had, I want to say, 3 or 4 screenwriters. And when I came in, I think they're on their second. And so something that I love about our studio is that we keep working on the story until we can't anymore. So there are so many of those iterations done on each one of those passes. They'll screen the whole entire film with storyboards, and then people will give notes, and then the screenwriter goes back. They work very closely with our story department and to come up with ideas and that sort of thing. But I'm trying to think of some of your other questions within the screenwriting process, which I don't really know a whole lot about, because I'm more on the animation side than the screenwriting side.
Well, are you given the script to animate? Is that what you're working from, or
so the way
storyboards?
at Disney, the way it works is they write it, and then it goes to our story department, and they storyboard out the entire film.
Okay.
And then we screen it. They screen it at the studio, and then typically most of the studio watches that, and then anybody can give notes, and then the screenwriter goes back. I believe with also the story artists, the directors, and then they'll talk about what changes do they want to make. The first iteration of Moana was very different from the film that you guys just saw, because they're making so many changes at each story pitch, if you want to call it that. I want to say there's probably, I'm trying to think of how many screenings we have, 8 to 10 screenings before the film is made, and even as we're animating it, they can still be writing. So they might, John Lasseter will usually say, I really like this sequence, I really like this sequence, so we can start animating on those, and then they can still be iterating on the first act or the last act or the middle. But yeah, basically once it, after it goes to story and it's about to go into animation, it goes into our layout department, and they're the cinematographers of the studio. During this time, the actors and actresses are reading those lines. I can't start my scene until the line has been read, because when you're acting out a scene, you could say, Craig, I'm going to go to the store. Or I could say, Craig, I'm going to go to the store. My acting is going to be completely different. So I can't start until that line is there. So that's kind of how that process works. And then we can start animating.
So you're actually working with the recordings.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I don't know a whole lot about the screenwriting
Right.
process, because it's so separate from ours. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is so helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you do much scratch track stuff anymore? They used to
It's
have a lot of
rare.
scratch track,
Yeah.
but it seemed like, it's not being helpful if it's only going to get you so far.
Right. We'll have scratch. We'll see a film with scratch,
Yeah.
but we don't start animating until it's
You got the real
the real
deal,
line.
yeah.
But I mean, every once in a while, something will happen. It happened to me once. In 19 years, it happened to me only once, luckily. Because we're so detailed and frame by frame, they call it ADR. If you have a scene ADR'd, you're like,
Automatic
no.
dialogue
Yeah, and they try to do a really good job matching it up, but it just isn't. But it was the very end of a film, and I think the actress was on vacation, and so I had to animate to some scratch, and then they shored it up. They actually did a really good job. But like I said, it's only happened to me once in 19 years, so it is pretty rare that happens.
It's a good thing then.
Yeah, very good thing. Yeah.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
I'm the animation student. My name is Chris, and I have a question. There's lots of touching scenes in Disney's animation. How can you make these scenes believable to make the audience believe it's touching?
Yeah, those are my favorite scenes to do. So when you are in a supervising position, we don't get to animate a whole lot because we're spending so much time with the directors and with the animators on the floor, helping
Right.
them with their scenes. So, but the grandmother Tala stuff right before her death, I was like, oh, I have to animate something in here. So I got to, but those scenes they're so subtle, and you have to kind of get to the core of that emotion. And that's where, like, for me, I study a lot of live action film of those moments to try to get to what is it about them that makes the character cry or makes me cry when I'm watching that. And I try to learn from that. And for me, when I'm acting out a scene, I try to get myself to that point. So sometimes I'll watch something really sad, a movie that's really sad, and I cry really easy. So it's not that hard. Or I think of a moment in my life that was, sad. So I try to put myself into that, and then I act it out. And so on Tangled, I was doing some of the stuff where Flynn was dying. Well, he was dead. And then she's singing over him. There's a long scene where she's singing over him. And I wanted that scene so bad, and I was so lucky that I got to do it. And when I went into the acting room, I had a grandfather that had passed away like a year before that, and the way everything happened was not the best. So I was thinking about that, and so then I was acting it out, and I was seeing what was happening in my throat as you're crying, and seeing some of the things that happen in your eyes, and then I was taking that and putting that into my scene.
Wow.
So I try to get to that point if I can. There's times too where you can't force it, and that's where I'll be like, okay, what's a movie that I cry at every time? And so I'll try to watch that little part. Anything you can do to kind of get yourself to that spot. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah, I think with everything, you're trying to, on a completely opposite type of a scene, there's a scene where Flynn and Rapunzel are first meeting each other, and he's sitting and he's trying to kind of win her over and swoon her over, yeah. And when I was in college, I worked at bars, and I was a waitress, I was a bartender. So you see a lot, right? You see all sorts of things. So when I acted out that scene, I put myself back into that moment.
Wow.
And yeah, so there's some fun things from that acting thing that I was able to put into that scene. So you're drawing on all of your life experiences,
Yeah.
good and bad. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, my name is Alan, and I'm a filmmaking student. Most of the film I do is live action films, so I'm not familiar with animation at all. But
Yeah.
Hearing what you were talking about the making of this film, there are a lot live action filmmaking techniques are applied
Yeah.
during the making of this film. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, what do you think is the most helpful live action filmmaking technique that were applied to animation filmmaking? And during your animation filmmaking career, what do you think that is the what animation filmmaking technique can be really helpful to apply to more live action filmmaking? Thanks.
So I'll answer the second one first, maybe. Something that I think we spend a lot of time in animation is the staging of our scene, the characters, the posing of our characters, which might be something that live action. I mean, I guess I don't know a whole lot about the live action filmmaking side of things, other than I love watching the performances of the characters and I think they're amazing. But if I don't act in front of people because I would be terrible. If I were forced to be in a class or something and do that, I would probably be more conscious of my body posing because of how conscious I am of it when I'm animating. Body language is so important. I mean, it's important in live action too. So I would probably be very aware of that. And then the first part of your question, what live action could bring to animation. I mean, I think there's so many amazing films with amazing cinematography, and that would be something. I mean, we're always trying to push our craft as well with every step. But yeah, I would say there's probably areas where we could push that in some of our films, whether it's with music and musicals. There's a lot of talk at the studio right now. There's a couple of animators that are trying to push ideas with that, which is kind of cool. So it's fun to see what they're coming up with.
Cool.
Great.
But
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
First, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure. Let me say it's animation, the hair animation beside the body is amazing. So at the time when you do the blocking for the animation, do you do the hair separate with the body, or you just like do it at the same time?
That's interesting. So, and a really good question. For us, it depends on the scene. If if a character is interacting, like with hair is so difficult to do in CG animation.
Told ya.
You know that? Yes, it is so hard. And interacting with hair is to
Even
a different
worse.
level, right? So, but on Moana, we're like, she's a teenager and she needs to touch her hair. And, she has long hair, and there's times where she needs to get out of the way or put it up in a bun or whatever. So if she's interacting with the hair, then we will pose it. We actually worked on some software to be able to do that more easily on Moana. So we will pose out that hair, and then we give it to our tech anim department, who's amazing. And then they will actually do all the magic part of sometimes the in-betweens and that sort of thing, and get it to go down the pipeline. If the character is not interacting at all and it's just, me sitting and it's blowing in the wind or whatnot, we sometimes will do drawovers if there's something specific that we're looking for. But generally tech anim takes care of all the hair and the cloth. But there are times where to plus a pose where we want the hair posed a specific way, and we will do drawovers for tech anim. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
First off, I have to tell you, I loved your Power of a Princess panel at D23.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness, it incredibly empowered me, so thank you so much.
I cannot tell you how nervous I was for that. Oh my gosh.
But you both looked so excited, like it really touched you as well, so
thank
I
you.
can see that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so since you're animating just a variety of characters all the time, and like you say, now you act out these scenes, do you think you learn something new about yourself each time? Like, do these characters speak to you?
Yes. And at the end of the film, on Frozen, I mostly animated on Anna, and I loved her character. I loved everything about Anna. And at the end of it, it's hard because it's kind of like you're losing your friend. The same thing
Oh,
with
you had to say
Rapunzel, same
goodbye.
thing with Moana, where you towards the end of the film, you know what they would do in every single situation. You know how they would stand, you know how they would move their feet or whatever it is. And so it's a weird feeling because you're excited about the next project and you've probably most likely worked a lot of hours to finish the film. So, but then, yeah, you're not getting to work on them or see them until they're on the big screen. So it's kind of weird because you do get to know them so well. And then what was the first part of, I don't know if I answered your question.
Like, do you learn something new about yourself each time?
I don't know if there's something I learn about myself. There's usually something I learn about, with the characters. I mean, Moana was just I learned so much about the culture. Usually I would say it's more on those levels, about a culture or an instance, more than what I've learned about myself. I will say I get really frustrated at myself when I look at a film like Frozen, because now I'm, a few years older and hopefully more knowledgeable. I'm like, I can't believe I did that in that scene. And so I get really, and yeah.
You look at your old work and you go,
Oh, yeah. I was looking at some stuff from like 15 years ago and I
Yeah.
was horrified.
what movie?
Well,
So let's say, so let's say a sequel comes around and then you actually do get the chance to
Yeah.
revisit that character.
Yeah.
Do you jump on that or do you go, oh, I've done that character, I want to move on?
you know what? We haven't done too many sequels. The first time I ever did that was
Prep and Landing.
Prep and Landing. And that was fun
It was
I
fun.
loved Kevin and Stevie, awesome directors to work with. They were so fun. The characters were fun. The Tangled Ever After short. I got to work on Rapunzel again, which I was so excited, and I got to do a kiss, which I don't think I had done a kiss before.
So that was your
doing
first
that.
kiss?
I think it was, yeah. And I love the movie Love Actually, and there's a scene where now I'm gonna forget all the characters' names, but there's a kiss in that film that I really like, so I use that as some reference for that. But I'm totally going off on tangent.
No, that's great.
Okay, so Wreck-It Ralph.
They're used to me
now
doing that, so it's fine. So
Wreck-It Ralph 2, I'm working on now. So you saw the princess sequence.
I did.
What did you think?
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Just for the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy they're being brought back.
Yeah.
Seriously, like.
I got to work on that sequence, animate on that sequence, and all the princesses came in to talk to us.
Wow.
And talk about their characters, which was amazing because you're meeting with Jodie Benson and Paige O'Hara and everyone. And
the who's of princesses.
yeah, and we learned a lot about that. Well, I learned a lot about that. I think everybody did, but some people are more knowledgeable with all that history than I was. But then to get to work on some of those scenes, so then I was studying lots of Cinderella and lots of...
She's my favorite.
Yeah,
Cinderella.
I love her. And studying a lot of Little Mermaid stuff because the scenes I was doing was with Cinderella and with Ariel and then Vanellope, and they were such fun scenes to work on. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. This was lovely.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Hi, good, thanks.
My name's Kevin. I'm actually in the screenwriting department.
Oh, cool.
So the question I want to ask you is purely from the educational standpoint,
Yeah.
is what did you have to do to get your stuff seen by Disney?
So I came in a completely different way than most people come in. I graduated school and I didn't think, my dream was to be a character animator, and my reel wasn't strong enough to be a character animator at that time. So I basically took any job that I could get, that fit within my talents. But they were hiring for this job called Scene Setup, which was kind of a job where we did lots of different things, but it was basically to help scenes go down the pipeline. So I kind of went in a different way, and then I would take our character rigs, which at the time were from the film Dinosaur. So I would take dinosaur rigs and I would come in on weekends and stay late, and I would just work on tests and get feedback from the other animators around me. And then it took me about 4 years, but then on Chicken Little, they started up a trainee program again. Disney has a great training program. At the time I was there, they stopped that training program for, I want to say it was about 3 or 4 years, because it was
a long
after
time.
Dinosaur,
Yeah.
and they didn't start it back up until Chicken Little. So then I applied for that, and luckily I got the position. So that probably doesn't apply to you as screenwriting necessarily, but maybe in case it applies to anybody else. So for screenwriters, I wish I knew more about that, but I think our directors tend to work with some of the same screenwriters, and I think sometimes our screenwriters get noticed from being in a, there's that list, like the blacklist or something of the 10 films that something, what is it, the 10 films that didn't actually get made but are brilliant scripts?
The 10 screenplays I have that for each year that were unproduced.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So sometimes they get noticed from something like that. So I don't know that there's any one place where they get noticed, but yeah, I think it's in different ways like that. Some of our screenwriters have come from either TV animation or live action, but we have a department where I think they read scripts all day and then decide what would be paired up for the director. But like I said, I'm so sorry, I don't know a whole lot about the screenwriting process.
It's quite
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned that there were several revisions of the story along the way, and I'm wondering if there are also several revisions of the character design, and how many people contribute to the design of the character.
So we have, Bill Schwab was our head of our character design team, and then he had some other character designers working with him. And then for me, one of my fun meetings I got to go to was seeing all the character design work. So they would basically put up a bunch of drawings on these boards and show them to the directors, and the directors would say, oh, I really like this one, I like this one, maybe not this one because I don't like this. And then they show more drawings, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of drawings were done of Moana, and every character is slightly different because sometimes they might just get there quicker. The directors might gravitate towards it for some reason much quicker. But once it goes into the modeling phase, typically the character design doesn't change too much. With Hei on Moana, his design changed a bit because he, at the start of the film, was very ornery and kind of an angry bird. And he almost got taken out of the film. I don't know if you guys know that part. He almost completely got taken out of the film. Yeah.
That'd be criminal.
Yeah. And then Jared, the screenwriter, got sick for like 3 or 4 days, but it was he was gonna write him out of the film. And then Adam Green, who was our character soup, and then some of the story artists were like, no, we have to find a way to keep Hei in this film. So they brought his IQ level way, 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 way down. And they storyboarded out that Kakamora sequence where she snatches him up, puts him in her mouth, and that whole action thing. And John Lasseter loved that. And then Hei got put back in the film.
Wow.
And the reason is because he makes Moana's journey more complicated. So that was part of the other reason why he got put back. But typically, your question of does the character design change? Once it goes to modeling, no. But Bill was in, and some of the other character designers, he was on the film a year before even I was on the film. So actually a good year, maybe even longer than that. So they were doing character designs for a couple years. Not to say every character for 2 years, and they're working on more than one character at a time. But it's a fun process to see. But they spend a ton of time on the drawings. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you ever look at a character in development that you're going to be working on and go, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get this character to smile or emote, and then you have to put in your 2 cents and say,
Yes.
oh my gosh, we can't do this way.
Yeah, definitely. And so we tried to do that in the character design phase when it's in a drawing. So for instance, like Moana's skirt, we knew she was going to be doing some high action stuff. And they're still working on stories, so we weren't exactly sure what, but we knew, it's an adventure. And they were showing designs of different types of skirts. And so then for me in animation, part of my job is to say, this skirt is not going to work for her to be, she can't jump off cliffs in a pencil skirt. So, not that a pencil skirt was ever one of the options, but it is like we do have to look out for stuff like that, or like
You have
you're
to keep
saying,
things
a smile.
functional, yeah.
Yeah, we have to think about what is going to restrict the characters from doing some sort of
Right.
action, and in some cases, you can use that as a challenge to make it something interesting that the
Where you
character
can
has
push
to
yourself even further.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it depends on what the character is and what they're doing, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
It's really nice to see you over here. So my question is, because you just answered a teacher's question that you guys, your department got the storyboard, and then you start to doing the animation. So I was wondering, how could you guys separate, because the whole movie is so long and there's a bunch of amazing animator was working for animation. So how could you guys separate the different parts to everyone, and how could you keep different animator like doing the whole animation in the same way? Because the whole because every character like look the same, right?
Sure. So on Moana, we had close to 100 animators, and we do something at the very beginning. So all of the animators had rolled off of Zootopia, and then coming on to Moana, we do something we call them Chalk Talks, where we sit with everybody and we go over Moana. How would she sit? How would she stand? What is her acting? We have our the character rig, so we'll bring the character rig up, and we have something called a picker page, which just has all the controls. And so the supervisors can say, you know what, I really love this control for getting a bend in her spine. I don't use this one too often because it gives her a hunchback, or whatever the thing is. So they kind of go over all of those controls and also acting, and we do several of those before we start animating or up front in production to try to keep her, we call it on model, the character on model, so that Moana looks like Moana no matter who's animating her. And then that's part of the job of the head of animation and the character soups to make sure if I'm animating Moana and Craig is animating Moana, that it still looks like the same character.
You're in such trouble.
You'd be awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Hannah, and I'm also inspiring to become a character animator. So I have a question. Have you ever noticed any struggles as a woman in this field when you started and everything? Because I know it's been like more men that's been working with animation back in the day.
Yeah. That's definitely true. In terms of having more men than women, there's not many female animators at the studio. There's actually not many female animators that are even applying. So all of you female character animators, make sure you apply. I have been really fortunate because since I've been at the studio, I've had really good leadership that has always treated us all the same, in my opinion. So I myself have not run into anything. And I feel really fortunate and really lucky for that. So, yeah, it's interesting to me because when I go talk to animation schools, I see lots of females. But then when I'm in real reviews, there's not very many women applying. And so I don't know why that is. I'm trying to figure that out a little bit. But
yeah, it's weird. But I think it's cool that you got to be like the lead animator. But I think it's weird that it hasn't been a woman before, though. So
you know what? I don't know that there's ever been a woman that's gone for it before. There have been other female supervising animators, not many, but I remember traditionally Ellen Woodbury was a soup on one of the traditional films. I'm not sure which one. My friend Becky, you know Becky.
Becky Brzee.
Yeah, she was a character supervisor on Anna. So there have been females that have been character supervisors, but for the title head of animation, that's one where there haven't. But like I said, I don't know that there's ever been any that have ever put their name in the hat for it. And because there are so few females in our department, yeah. And Becky and I think, are the oldest.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Becky's still there?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Tell her I said hi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Becky and I were chosen pretty much at the same time.
Okay.
So
Wow.
her film, that it just happened to come out after mine. Okay. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And also, I don't know if you knew, did you work was Kira there at the studio? So she's co-head of animation on Wreck-It Ralph too.
Oh, awesome.
Hello, I'm
Hi.
Juan. I'm an animation student here at NYFA. I would like to ask you, what do you think Disney is looking for in new animators?
What are we looking for with animators?
Yeah.
In animators?
Like for new animators to be recruited in
Oh
Disney?
yeah, we look for performance, so acting tests. That's super important to have on your reel. We put so much importance on performance and acting, so I think that's the most important thing if you can have on your reel, and then full body tests. But like I was saying earlier, it's not the quantity, but it's the quality of what you have on your reel. But really, we just look at a reel. So, I mean, people submit a resume, but it's really the most important thing is your reel, your reel of animation tests. We don't care if it's lit. We don't care if it's, fancy paint textures. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are showing play blasts, and that's
Does
totally
it matter?
fine.
That's good?
No, not at
Accepting?
all.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for new people coming out of school, they're always play blasts. Yeah. Or most of the time play blasts. Yeah, it's people that have been at other studios where they'll tend to show
more
what's
rendered things. Yeah.
But for the most part, they're just play blasts.
But it doesn't make any difference to you guys because you're looking at performance, not render quality.
Totally. Yeah, we're purely looking at the performance of the characters. Yeah. So that's the most important thing is your reel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
I always wonder, how do you act when you do a body mechanics? And yeah.
Body mechanics are so hard.
It is. It is for me.
Yeah, it's hard for almost everybody. So it just is.
Do you act it like?
It depends on what it is. There were shots I was doing on, I think it was Big Hero 6, we were in pre-production. We were doing some character tests, and I think I was doing some stuff with Wasabi, and they wanted his style to be kata movement, which is kind of like a karate and kung fu. I don't know a lot about martial arts, but it was called kata. And so thank goodness for YouTube. So you just look up, I would Google that, and then I would find all sorts of different things would come up from, world champions and stuff like that. So I would study what they were doing and their body mechanics. So if it's something action-oriented, I remember studying parkour for something. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what scene that was for. That might have also been Big Hero 6. So it depends. If I can't physically do it, then I will search for it somewhere else. If it's a female character, then and it's something where I'm acting and kind of walking in space or something like that, then I'll try to do it myself and then analyze that. Yeah.
Okay, thank
But
you.
yeah, body mechanics, don't feel bad about that because it's hard for everybody.
It is.
Yeah, most of our department, if you ask most animators, do you want to work on action or acting? Almost all of them will say acting, and obviously there's body mechanics in acting as well. But yeah, full body scenes are definitely more complicated and take a lot longer than waist up shots. Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Alrighty, well, I think that about wraps it up. Amy, thank you for coming. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
It was so much fun.
Thank you.